Welcome to the Moms of Tweens and Teens podcast. If some days you doubt yourself and you don't know what you're doing, if you've ugly cried alone in your bedroom because you felt like you're failing, well, I just want you to know you're not alone and you have come to the right place. Raising tweens and teens in today's world is not easy, and I'm on a mission to equip you to love well and to raise emotionally healthy, happy tweens and teens that thrive. I believe that moms are heroes, and we have the power to transform our family and to impact future generations. If you are looking for answers, encouragement, and to become more of the mom and the woman that you want to be, welcome. I'm Cheryl Gould, and I am so glad that you're here. Hi, friend. Welcome to the show today. And when our kids leave for college, it can be an exciting time, but also a scary time. When our kids are in our home, at least we feel like we have some control, even if it's an illusion of control. But we can feel like we have some influence on their decisions and keeping them safe. And when they go to college or leave the nest, we worry. Will they make good decisions? Will they be okay? What if they are sick and they don't tell me, or they don't go to the infirmary or the doctor? What if it's serious? Will they make friends? What if they're feeling homesick or anxious or depressed? Or what if they go to a party and binge drink? It can be a really helpless feeling, and we know at the same time that it's a necessary part of growing up to give them space, and that they need the opportunity to make their own decisions and figure things out without us calling them all the time, which, by the way, I've done. It doesn't work very well. Well, I have here today a very special guest, Dr. Jill Grimes, and she's here to help us. She is an award-winning author of the humorous and evidence-based book, The Ultimate College Student Health Handbook, your guide for everything from hangovers to home sickness. And she is passionate about prevention. We talk a lot about some of the bigger things that we worry about in this episode, like alcohol and drugs, and how to talk to our kids. And it is very enlightening and informative. And I know that you're going to get so much wisdom and nuggets from giving it a listen today. So let's dive in. Well, welcome, Dr. Jill, to the Moms of Tweens and Teens podcast. I am so excited to talk to you today.
Oh, I'm excited to connect with all of you. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. And I'm so excited to have somebody like you on the show to be talking about health, to be talking about our college students and all those things that keep us up at night, keep us fearful, worried about. And you wrote a book. I want to hold it up for those that are looking at this on YouTube, and our listeners can't see it, but it is called The Ultimate College Student Health Handbook, your guide for everything from hangovers to homesickness. 240 award-winning tips, tricks, and hacks. I love it.
There you go.
So we are going to be digging into all of the, I've been reading it. It is such a great book to give to your kid, such a good book to read yourself. I was like, so many things I learned. And I want to talk about some of the things that really stood out to me in the book that we really worry about, like weed, drinking, that binge drinking, STDs, all those things that we don't really want to talk about. I mean, but we do. But I want first for you to just tell them. I said in the intro, I told all about your background, medical background, and what you do. But what led you to write this book?
Well, it's really a combination of sort of my life and my passion. So I'm that mom that was also the Girl Scout leader. I'm crafty. I like making things, and I'm a family physician. And so it started because for the YouTube people, I'm going to show a demo here. I began making first aid kits, college first aid kits, as high school graduation gifts. And the first one I made, I was so excited. It was for our neighbor who was our, the babysitter for our girls. And, she always came over to ask Dr. Jill if there was ever a medical problem, whatever, Mom said, go ask Dr. Jill. But so I gave her this gift and it was all crafty and cute. And her mom's like, okay, this is great, but you know what? She doesn't know how to use any of it. She runs in her kitchen, she gets out an index card and she goes, okay, when does she take Tylenol versus Advil? And she starts taking notes. And so anyway, so that was the first kit I ever made. The next batch that I made for, the next year of babysitters at that point, I started including my own little index cards, and that grew into a 20-page laminated booklet. At that point, I realized I'm like, yeah, especially before our girls go off, I want to say way more than just food poisoning and sprained ankles. I want to talk about insomnia and test anxiety and all the things. So it became a book.
Yeah, and you cover everything in this book. I love how you have it broken down into head, brain, eyes, ears, nose, mouth, neck, chest, stomach, back, pelvic, extremities, skin. You cover it all and what falls under that.
Yes, I want to, and this is not a sit down and read it book, except for moms. I know a lot of moms do actually sit down and read it, but this is a grab it when you need it sort of thing. But also for kids in high school, a lot of times the feedback that surprised me was how many kids were like, "Oh, I thought I was the only one who had like fear of public bathrooms." And they were nervous about that for college before they went to, at home, they had their own bathroom and they were going to have sharing. I mean, little things like that. It's very interesting what people picked up on. So I think it helps high school students as they're kind of prepping for college to, flip through it. And again, it's not something I expect people to sit down and read. It's more I've got a splitting headache. Google says I have a brain tumor. Dr. Google's not very smart. So let's see what else it might be.
Yeah, I could have really used something like this when I was in college. Like, how do I know when I need to be worried about, my sore throat? When do I do something about that? How do I know? Yeah. Such really good basic things. Sty in my eye, a pink eye. I remember getting that in college. What do I have?
Same.
Yeah.
Same. My Southern Texas roommate told me I got a sty, and she said, sty in my eye, jump on the next one that comes by. That was how I was told to treat sty. So I thought maybe I could do a little better than that with a rice sock, which is a fun little
I'm thinking because this will be broadcast before Christmas. This is something that's really a good Christmas gift. It's a wonderful, we'll add it to our graduation gifts, a wonderful graduation gift to equip our kids. And what's the feedback that you have been getting from the book?
I have honestly just been overwhelmed. I did it. This was my passion project. If nothing else, I was doing it for our two girls as they were launching to college. Although, as it turned out, I took so long to get it done that the younger one actually is the illustrator. She has a degree in animation, and she was a freshman, and she had already been an illustrator she went to Loyola Marymount in LA, and she was working for their publishing press as an illustrator. And so this was the second book she had illustrated, but she became my illustrator. But anyway, the feedback that I've gotten has been that even though obviously everybody in the younger generation, and us too now, our instinct, we have something wrong, what are we going to do? We are going to ask Dr. Google. And that's okay. But the problem is at 3 a.m. when you have a bad headache and literally you go to Dr. Google and you think you have a brain tumor, that's just, it's not helpful. And so I wanted people to have something to grab and equal the headaches to concerns about STDs and even though everyone kind of knows, well, how do you avoid a hangover? You don't drink, but understanding all the parts of a hangover and how you can feel better once you have one and the different parts of it, or concussion, all these different things people have, are in our extended friend group, people just text me and they're like, oh my gosh, my kid, honestly, I get a lot of my kid was drinking and they fell and hit their head and then they were looking at your stuff about concussion, and it was so helpful because they knew what steps to do, and they knew to go to their professors early on, they knew to go to their doctor early on, and they understood how to what the process was going to be. So it just warms my heart every time someone says that they're it took a bad situation and made it less scary.
Yes. And I love the way that you write it, because it's written for college students, and there's humor in it. It's not like mom scolding you or anything like that. It's very informative. It's written in a playful, fun way. You wrote it with such a great balance of information and truth and humor. I was like, wow, was that hard to do?
No, because that's how I practice. And I literally wrote it exactly how I talk to young adults, in the exam room. Honestly, tweens, teens, and young adults. I'm family medicine, so I'm, crib to cradle or crib to coffin, whatever they say. But I have always just had a special place in my heart for adolescents and young adults. And I think, I had great parents, but in general, as a teen and tween, I wanted to be older than I was. And I felt like I wasn't being heard as an equal. I felt like I was being talked down to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've always tried never to do that. Like puppy love is the classic example. How many people, they got a broken heart because their puppy love ended. Well, you know what? That is devastating for that kid. And we have to acknowledge stuff as they're experiencing it. So that's my bias.
That's perfectly put. That's what I sensed. You're talking as an equal. You're not talking down to them, which
yes,
I think
and
is tricky.
trying to have and I really try and be non-judgmental. I just as a truism I have found in life, anytime you say, well, I would never, or my kid would never. Mm-hmm. So, so no,
humbling. No. Oh my gosh. I've done that. And it's like, then you're eating crow, It's
exactly.
Well, yeah. What were you going to say? Yeah.
I was just, So I try and I'm a straight shooter, and my patients know that I hate smoking. And, that is something I'm never going to say, yay, you're smoking. That's great. So I am not judgmental about it, but I'm just going to every time say, this is why this is a problem,
Yeah. Very matter of fact, and just being a truth teller out of care and concern.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's dive in to some of the tougher topics that you share in the book. And this is such a problem, as we all know, unfortunately, the party culture, the blackout drinking.
Yes, I'd love to talk about that.
Yeah, weed, vaping, STDs. So let's jump into the hard stuff and the blackout drinking. You talk about that in the book. That's a real problem now. And
It's a real problem. And there's two parts to it. One part that many doctors are unaware of is that our ADHD medications are really contributing. And here's the thing. When you take a stimulant ADHD medication, so they're not all like Strattera is not, but Vyvanse and Adderall and Concerta, all of those are stimulant ADHD medications. And when you take those and they are active in your brain, and those are all long acting medicines that I just listed. And so they're active for 12 to 14 hours, even though the kids will tell you, oh, well, the effects wear off in 4 to 6 hours. Some of them do, but it doesn't fully wear off in your brain. And so if you go out drinking and you took your medicine, especially if you took your medicine 4 hours ago and you are now out drinking, you are not going to feel a buzz from alcohol for several drinks, frankly. And it
wow.
doesn't mean the rest of your body, you're still, those blood alcohol levels are raising. It's irritating your stomach lining. It's irritating your liver. It is going to affect your brain. Your warning signs are what's blunted. So they go and they have, and the other part is that kids are doing shots as opposed to sitting around drinking beers, which fills you up, and you have to really work at alcohol toxicity if you're only having beer, because it's a quantity and filling up sort of thing. But a shot takes 1 second to drink, and if you're doing multiple shots, and especially if you're doing them and not feeling it, so now you're doing way too many, you go from being totally fine to really drunk. And can I take a minute to explain what blackout drinking specifically means?
Yes.
Yeah. So blacking out is not passing out. Passing out is unconscious. And obviously that's alcohol toxicity and that's a medical emergency. But blackout drinking refers to when your blood alcohol level rises too high, too fast. It actually turns off a little, so I think of it as a switch, in that takes short-term memories and makes them long-term memories. And so you're not creating long-term memories. So the next day, even regardless of how awake or alert you seemed, you have a blackout of your memory. You have a memory gap, and nothing anybody shows you on their phone or tells you what you did is going to bring that memory, that true memory, back, because you didn't make long-term memories.
Wow.
So parents, let's take this step further and think about some extended effects of this with if you were sexually intimate, if you were physically intimate with somebody. Kids all know now that it's not just no means no, but you have to have enthusiastic, verbalized consent, ongoing consent. Someone may give you that consent, but you actually can't consent when you're drunk. But someone may have been saying yes, 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 yes. But the next day, if they had that situation where their blood alcohol level rose too quickly, too fast, they have no memory of that. And this creates some significant legal consequences about consent. And of course, no one can actually consent if they've been drinking, but it takes it to a whole nother level. And there are, more and more lawsuits about this sort of thing. And this is not gender specific. We think about this as, guys sexually abusing girls, and it definitely goes both ways.
Wow. I never knew that. I mean, when you said, oh, can I explain what blackout drinking is? I'm like, well, I know what that is. It's like, I can't remember, but I never understood why that happens. And even thinking about that gap of, if it happens and it's if the blood alcohol level rises too quickly.
Yes.
So does that mean
too fast, too high, too fast?
So
that's
would that be
for, and it's different for everybody?
Okay. Is that more likely to happen if you're doing shots because it's so quick? Okay.
Yeah. Honestly, I will, there's no absolutes in medicine, and you can get blackout drunk from beer or wine, but you would have to be shotgunning. You would really have to be working at it. And we see it all the time now with shots, because people, that is often the introduction to drinking, and it's vodka shots. That's, for a while it was tequila, but it's been vodka for years now. And that is a social norm, particularly, not to pick on the Greeks, but especially in the Greek culture at many schools.
Okay. Yep. Yep. The whole Greek system.
Mm-hmm.
You also talk about if somebody passes out, what to do and what to be aware of. And that is so scary. And of course, the news tells us all those devastating stories about kids
Yes.
that have been hazed and drinking and all of
Yeah.
that. What do you have to say about that?
Um, I have two things to say. And the first is that when we have to get across to our kids, if somebody is unconscious, okay, so how do you know if someone's unconscious? That's the most common question I get asked. What if, are they just sleeping, drunken sleeping or unconscious? If you cannot wake them up, they're unconscious. Shake their shoulders, say their name really loudly. Hey, Susan, wake up, wake up. If you cannot arouse them to where they can be coherent and talk to you, they're unconscious and you just need to get help. That people don't want to call 911 for that. And they say, oh, well, if I did that for everybody, the ambulance would be here all the time. Well, you know what? Do you want to live with that? You could have saved someone's life if you would have called me. You need to call. If they're unconscious, if you cannot wake them up, they're unconscious and you need to call for help. The second thing is that right now, we all know that there's a fentanyl crisis, right? And fentanyl is it's not, our students are not saying, hey, let me take that fentanyl pill. They're saying, hey, here's a Xanax. They call it a bar because it's shaped like a bar. Here's a Xanax. You're super stressed. You haven't been sleeping. You're stressed. Just take the Xanax. Just take it. Well, the Xanax has fentanyl in it, and that and both we see it in the party scene for people who are doing it to enhance their buzz, but we also see it, just in the dorm rooms and stuff. And again, if someone is unconscious, that's an emergency. And in this day and age, I think if someone is unconscious, you need to give them Narcan, which is now over the counter. The spray, the Narcan spray, it reverses fentanyl. So, and you can't rely, people say, well, how do you know if it's fentanyl versus just alcohol versus weed versus cocaine versus whatever? You can look at pupil size, but the reality is that some things dilate your pupils, some things constrict your pupils, and rarely do people just have one thing in their system. And so it does no harm. I want parents to definitely hear this. It does no harm to give Narcan to somebody who does not have fentanyl in their system. It can only help. Okay. It can cost you money.
Are they starting to carry that like in dorms now?
Yes, more and more. So it just became non-prescription last month. And so, or September, I guess it was late September, but recently. And so now that it's over the counter, there was a lot of hesitation of having it available when it was only prescription for legal reasons. Okay. And now that I think most dorms are, trying to have it available.
Is that something that a parent should give their kids when they go to college? So if they see a kid that is passed out like this, that they're worried about, that they have it on hand?
Yes, I now include that. So in the next edition of my book, that's one of the new things that I added, because I didn't put it before. Again, it was prescription. There were other issues with it, but now that it's over the counter, I do think it belongs in every college student first aid kit. I really do. And, people say, well, you're not going to have it with you at a party. Well, honestly, if the parties you go to, people are routinely using pills and weed and cocaine and other substances in addition to alcohol, I would toss it in a backpack or a purse to have it. I think somebody, and our kids, it's like there's a fine line. We want our kids to help others, but I also want kids to know, because what happens is the good kids, I'm doing air quotes for those who can't see me, the kids who choose not to drink, which, by the way, 20 to 30% of college students choose not to drink. A higher percentage choose not to use weed or other substances. So it is not everyone, but within certain friend groups, it's everyone. And so if if you are in a partying friend group, I definitely think someone needs to have that. But you remember, you are not a doctor. Um, your job is to get help. If you have the Narcan, great, you give that while you're on the phone with 911, and you can save a life. But you're not fully responsible. You are responsible for trying to get help.
Wow. I love that you're saying that because, yeah, you can go, a kid might go, oh, I'll just give the Narcan, we're all good. But
Yeah,
it's
no.
call for help.
And right. And a sleeping drunk person can become an unconscious person. So you don't, this whole, I actually had a parent tell me just the other day, they were talking to me about their child who is at college, who got very drunk and fell and got a concussion, hit their head, broke teeth. It was a pretty significant injury. And the paramedics were called and they were there. And the paramedics said to this mom, do you want us to let her sleep it off? And I'm like, oh my gosh, no. The mom is the physician and she's like, no, I want you to take her to the hospital. And we can't have that mindset. If somebody is unconscious, especially in that situation where someone's got a head injury on top of it, they need further assessment.
That is shocking. That's why we need your book. We need to be educated. Our kids need to be educated about these things. You said something that I just think our kids really need to know. They can just consider it passed out. Oh, they're just passed out. And
right.
That is something that's just kind of considered, oh, they've been drinking, they're passed out. But that you mentioned that is unconscious. Like if you're shaking them and they're not waking up, what could happen? Are
so the problem,
that they'll be okay?
Right. So and honestly, the reality is that the majority of the time they probably will be okay. But what about the minority of the time when they're not? So what happens is, and this is one of the things that I try and explain, and I explain it in the book, that as your blood alcohol level is rising, and remember, it's irritating your liver, it's irritating your stomach lining, so you're getting nausea, right? One of the things that happens is that your gag reflex is suppressed. So we all know that feeling of like when you're eating popcorn or even just drinking water where it goes down the wrong pipe, right? And then we have that forceful, insane, really strong cough. That's our gag reflex. That's gone. So if you are passed out and your blood alcohol levels up and all this stuff is irritations going on and you start vomiting, you choke on your vomit. And I'm sorry, I know that's kind of a gross description, but that's what happens. And that's dangerous. Mm-hmm. Also, when your blood alcohol level gets high enough, you stop breathing. It suppresses your drive to breathe. And combining alcohol with a painkiller like fentanyl, that's what's super dangerous because again, it stops your drive to breathe. And that's, you just, your the part of your brain that controls your breathing stops. And so you die because you're not breathing.
Yeah. I think we all know. Scary. I think it's safe to say we all know somebody that's happened to, whether they're,
yes.
at our high school. I mean, I know one of my kids played on a travel sports team and the kid at college died. He had a shoulder injury playing a sport and he was drinking and he was taking painkillers. He died.
Right.
Yes. Devastating. I know somebody else that one of my kids' friends, they were with friends all drinking and a friend passed out. They just kind of all passed out and they woke up and their friend was the next day. It's just,
in your neck of the woods, I don't know if you have run across a woman named Becky Savage. Two of her sons, Nick and Jack Savage died on the same night at a graduation party, and they took a pill.
Wow.
And they have a foundation. Um, they have a foundation to promote education about narcotics and how one pill can kill.
Oh my gosh, that's
So,
devastating. Two sons. Wow, on the
yes,
same night.
2 of her 4, and I obviously can't imagine. And I kudos to her and her husband for being able to move forward from that, devastating tragedy in their family and be able to share their story with others, because it's not bad kids.
Oh, yeah. It
It's,
can happen. It can happen to anybody. I think that's why it's so scary that our kids understand this. So we're going to talk about weed and other things. And we've been on this because I think it's so important to talk about. But how do we get it through to our kids if their brains aren't fully developed? They are impulsive.
Right.
They're not connecting cause and
Right.
effect. That's why I really think everybody needs to get this book, because you wrote it in such a way that you're fascinated by it. So I think it's equipping our kids. It's talking to them indirectly through your words.
Yeah.
And I think they need that. But what would you say to a parent if you feel like your kid is like, oh, it's not going to happen to me? Or what do you say to them?
Honestly, I think sharing stories I've always said this, stories are more powerful than statistics. And that's why, like, I start off each little section with a little what most likely happened. And it's a paragraph story, but people can remember stories. We remember episodes of Grey's Anatomy.
Mhm.
We don't remember statistics of how many people have chlamydia, you remember stories of your friend who was infertile because she had chlamydia and it was missed and not diagnosed, and then she had scarring and later on she couldn't have kids. You remember the stories. So I think when there is, whether it's a movie or a TV show that you're watching, I think those stories about things like this happening, because it unfortunately does happen a lot, and we do. Every one of us has it in our community. That it is something to talk about, and we also have to acknowledge that it doesn't happen to everybody. One of the things, people want stuff to be black and white. Parents want me to say that this is 100% awful, or whatever. And I think if I go tell college students, if I take a group of freshman guys pledging a frat, and I tell them that 30% of college students don't drink, they're going to think I'm stupid. They're literally going to think I don't know what I'm talking about. Now, that's a true and accurate fact, but not in their friend group. So I think we just have to choose opportunities to share stories that are pertinent. And I'm not, parents, I'm definitely not saying send your kid a story every single day. This person, because sadly they're out there. If you look for them, unfortunately they are out there. But I think, following an Instagram account, or, looking for someone like the Savages who are out there educating and sharing their stories, I think that that's a good idea.
Yeah, raising
And
our
we can put it in your show notes. I've got her book behind me somewhere that you can add.
Okay. Well, that's very helpful to share stories. Maybe even asking them, a question like, I don't know, like, have you heard stories where there's been a kid that has passed out and something bad happened? That might, even asking them a question where they're going, well, yeah, I heard that happen. It's coming from them too, because I'm sure they've heard some stories. So
most of them have now, and I think that's effective. That goes back to your motivational interviewing podcast of asking open-ended questions. And one of the key things when I'm talking with parents is to say, don't go on a fishing expedition when you're talking with your kid. It's not like, which one of your friends is doing blah blah blah. When I talk to kids, I say, what percentage of your friend group, what percentage of your peers smokes weed? 0 to 10%, 10 to 20, 50%. I speak in generalities of your friend group or your peer group. and you get much more honest responses.
Oh yeah. No, I'm glad that you said that, because then when they say they're going to go hang out with Sally and you know that Sally is doing things you don't want them to do, then you come off really judgmental, and that does
Yes,
not work. That does not work.
it does
So
not.
yeah, a big problem is weed and is the whole vaping. So
Yes.
what would you encourage us to, how do we handle that and talk to our kids?
Okay. So vaping is so frustrating. Um, these are the kids that we raised who would literally, when they were 5 years old, point to somebody and say loudly, "That's disgusting," if they saw someone smoking a cigarette.
Hmm.
These same kids are now addicted to nicotine because of vaping. And first it was the Juuls, and now it's the different little brightly colored cartridges. Um, everything is all about what's going on social media and what they're seeing. And what what we need to get back a bit to is, kids know that nicotine, that smoking causes cancer. They also think that vaping is not bad, and that weed is definitely not bad. And so we need to
Hmm.
talk about some specifics. So with the vaping, if you talk to any older kid who used to vape, they will tell you how hard it was to quit. We know this from generations of smokers. Nicotine is super addictive, and part of why it's so addictive is that because it's inhaled, the effect is instant. It's seconds. It's not, with drinking it takes at least minutes, up to 10 minutes. But and by the way, with edibles, I digress a
Oh,
moment,
yeah.
but we'll have to come back to that. But edibles, it could take up to 90 minutes to feel anything. So, and we've got a generation that's used to this instant effect. So that's how things get overdosed there. But anyway, so the problem with the nicotine is it's super addictive, and it starts off as just looking cool. And a lot of middle school, so our tweens, um, they don't even realize that there's nicotine in there. They honestly they're like, it's vapor, vaping, vapor sounds like vapor water, colored water with flavors. It's just kind of to look cool. Well, it's not. And it's just crazy addictive. So we have to talk about that and why it's addictive. It gives you that dopamine hit, but that dopamine hit wears off almost immediately, and then you've got to have more. So it's, we could talk to them about it, like same with video games, and it's
Yeah.
that immediate gratification. So we have to go back to talking about that. We have to remind them that nicotine, all the nicotine delivery systems are associated with cancers. And we're learning more about the vaping, but the bottom line is when you're burning something, the stuff that goes into burning it, it's bad for you. It is not good to inhale anything into your lungs other than oxygen, period. It's just going to be bad. So there's that. On weed, I guess the big things I want parents to know, one, today's weed is not our pot. Okay, it's hugely different. The THC, which is the active component that creates the buzz in the brain, that used to be 3 to 5%. And now in concentrated products, it is above 90%. In dabbing and oils, and these are like super concentrated products. In the regular weed that kids are either, honestly, they're more vaping it than smoking it. But at any rate, the concentration is between 15 and 30%. So we went from 3 to 5% up to 15 to 30%. It used to be considered non-addictive. At the current concentrations, guess what? It is addictive. It's not addictive for everybody, but about teens,
Mhm.
1 in 6 teens are going to get addicted from the first time they use it, which means 5 out of 6 won't, which means that you can point to all of your friends if you're a teen and say, well, they use it just on the weekends. It's not a big deal. And, it may turn out not to be a huge deal for them. I don't know. but you don't know if you're that 1 in 6. And the other thing that I really want parents to hear and young adults to hear is the connection with schizophrenia. And weed does not cause all of schizophrenia. I am not saying that. But if you, in your family history, if you have genetic predisposition because you've got family, extended relatives with schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, weed is poison for you because it can flip a switch on too early in your brain that triggers a psychosis. So psychosis is like extreme paranoia, hallucinations. A lot of times people think someone's chasing them. It's terrifying.
I've had clients as kids. It's very real because I've had quite a few moms I've worked with. This has happened with their kids. It's like flipping a switch.
And the problem is we don't, in medicine right now, today, and I hope there's a different answer 10 years from now, we don't have a little pill that I can give you and turn that switch off. And these are the panic calls. My bias, and I have absolute bias against weed. And it is because I see all the bad outcomes. Everything I see is a bad outcome. Let me put it that way. I don't see all that bad outcomes, but everything I do see is a bad outcome. So I am biased, and it's terrifying. And illnesses with psychosis are really difficult to manage and live with. And it may be that they were going to develop that disease, schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, down the road. But even if you saved them 10 years from developing it, that's a decade of better, easier life, especially in the time of life where you're making lifelong choices. You're choosing your career, your partner, all of it. These are just critical years, and that I think we need to protect more. So I'll step off my soapbox now.
Yeah. No. And what would you say to the parent? Like that is in their family history. And the unfortunate thing is a lot of kids that are smoking weed, they are the kids that are anxious. They are the kids that are struggling in some way. And so they're wanting to self-medicate.
Absolutely.
And so what do you do? You talk to them about it.
Right. And it's a vicious problem because it's a cycle. And if you talk to any college psychiatrist or counselor or primary care physician, you're going to get a very, again, extremely negative bias against weed because, again, nowadays, these higher concentrations, it is addictive, meaning it has a withdrawal symptoms. Okay. Part of the withdrawal symptoms are insomnia, anxiety. It's all the things that people started using it for. And so it creates this, they're using it to calm down their anxiety, to help them relax and go to sleep. But as it wears off out of their system, it's creating that problem worse again. And so what we see is that it's actually spiraling and making things worse. But in the moment, and this is what's key to acknowledge, in the moment, if you are anxious and you use weed, most likely, except for when it doesn't, most likely it's going to relax you and calm you down. Except when it doesn't, because once in a while there's a paradoxical reaction and it makes people just crazy, sped up and anxious. And it can be the same plant. There's different weed plants. There's a whole language about all of this, but there's some that's more stimulating than others, but it's not consistent, and we don't know ahead of time. Buying from the same place, what you think is the same thing, you're going to have a different reaction, and it's not necessarily because there's something else in it. Sorry. The other thing, please note, parents, it is not legal everywhere. Getting something at a legal dispensary, I believe, is less risky than not. I tell people in Texas, which is where I am currently, that 100% of our weed in Texas is illegal. So you're getting it from illegal drug dealers. Those drug dealers don't look like scary people off, in the dark alley. They're college students. So it looks safe. It feels safe. and you get handed something, but the reality is they don't know what's in it. If you didn't grow it, you don't know what's in it, and it's sold by weight. Things are put in there to make it heavier, like like ground glass particles. Think about inhaling that into your lungs. Like nobody
Ah,
intelligent do that, like that's just when our college when you talk about it like that, people are like, oh, huh, yeah, okay, all right, you're right. And it doesn't mean they're going to stop smoking weed tomorrow, but if we can talk about it in true practical terms of like, look, it's illegal, it's sold by weight, things get put in it. Also, other substances get put in it because when you have powerful weed, more people want to buy it. So
mm,
illegal drug dealers will put formaldehyde in there. I mean,
mm, mm,
we all know
mm.
formaldehyde is, used for pickling frogs and other things. So we don't want to put poison straight into our bodies and our brains, and especially brains younger than 25. I mean, there's absolute evidence that the earlier you introduce weed, the worst outcomes, it's more addictive, you've got that developing brain, and it causes a lot more problems. People who are using it older than 25, there is less, there's not no issues, but there are less issues.
Yeah. Gosh. Whoa. I mean, it's so much. So that's
I
why
know. Sorry.
they want to get your book. So you have to tell them where to get your book so they can give it to their kids. It's a great, I'm sure you've gotten this feedback. You can pick different parts out of it. You can just pick what you want to talk about. But I would imagine it can be a good tool to talk about some things before they go to
Yeah,
college or are being, even if they're in college now. Um,
yes. And stuff like test anxiety and insomnia, I'm equally passionate about those. There are so many kids that are just, even kids that aced high school, just blew through it, almost especially those kids, because frankly, they didn't learn good study techniques because it came too easy for them. And then they get to college and it's a whole different level. Or maybe they only had essay tests because they were at a smaller private school, and now they're having to have multiple choice tests at a bigger school. And honestly, that's really difficult when you've done essays before. And we see all kinds of test anxiety, and there's lots of things you can do for that, both medically, in the form, actually in form of medicine, in addition to other behavioral things. So anyway, so yes, so I think it can be a good tool. I've had many parents tell me that they have slipped crisp $20 bills into their favorite topics that they were hoping that their child would read.
that's a creative way to do it. Here's 20
You know?
bucks if you read this part of the book. I love that. That's cute. That's kind of a
Yeah.
playful way to do it too, to get your kid,
Yes.
to read it because I love and care about you so much. Yeah, that's cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Find that here's the book. Find the 20s. There's a couple hidden in there.
And you
And
have the
and the
little
truth
best-selling, you have the bestseller on your book, right?
oh, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I feel very honored that the book has won a ton of awards, and so this was the best book awards winner. But yeah, and
Yeah.
so
Well,
you can find. I always say support your local bookstores first. Always ask there first. But it's on Amazon. It's on sale right now. Um, so just in time for Christmas.
oh
So you can
yeah.
get it
Well,
there.
yes. And like you said, it talks about so many things. It's not just the drugs and the weed and the vaping, but I thought those are things that really scare us so much. And
Yes, as parents,
parents,
that's definitely
yeah.
what we
Um,
worry about. And
yeah. So
also, you can tell your kids that I am the TikTok college doc. If you want, honestly, those little reels on TikTok, regardless of what people think about TikTok, I won't go there. But the reality is that a lot of our kids watch that, and I want to talk directly to them. So I am the TikTok college doc. So it's a great conversation starter. Or, I have all these tender topics in little short 1 minute sound bites. So might
yeah,
be a way to start talking.
I was telling Dr. Jill, I've watched them and they're really good. So definitely check that out. So tell them, you have told them a little bit, tell them where to find you, your website and all of that.
All right. So my website is just my name. It's jillgrimesmd.com. I haven't been super active on there, but I occasionally I do put up a blog post there. And my Instagram is Jill Grimes MD. And what else is there? Across everything, I'm Jill Grimes MD, except for on TikTok. I'm the TikTok College Doc. It's TikTok.
TikTok College Doc. That's great that you got that. I love it.
Thank you.
So, yeah, thank you, Dr. Jill, so much for coming on and talking to us. And we'll have to have you back because there's so many more things that we can cover. So thank you.
We can cover the less scary stuff or even the more scary. I guess we didn't touch on STDs. So
yeah.
Anyway, yes, I'd love to come back. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, that's it for today. And thank you for taking the time out with me and listening. I so appreciate you. And if you are enjoying this podcast, if you could take a moment and leave a review, sharing what you really appreciate about this podcast. I always want to get the word out to other moms or parents or caregivers that can use the encouragement, support, insights, wisdom that is shared on this show. So thank you so much for joining me today and have a great week. And I will see you back here next week. Have a good one. Bye.